this is not an easy task. It requires us to be honest about our past. It requires us to be open to different points of view and requires us to be willing to compromise. But I am confident that we can do it. I am confident that we can create a more just and equal society. I am confident that we can leave a better world for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you, God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Barack Obama's election in 2008 was a historical moment for African American history. His victory was a result of smart decisions and powerful messaging and the right timing. Obama's campaign was very different from previous ones. He used the internet and social media in ways that have never been done before. His team also raised millions of dollars online using small donors, which helped them fund their campaign. They also used websites like social media to connect with younger voters. Obama's message, hope, and change resonated well with many people, especially during a time when many felt frustrated with the government and the economy. His calm, optimistic approach also stood out to many voters. Obama's election was especially significant because he became the first African American president. Obama built a strong, diverse group of supporters. While in the battle to become president, Barack Obama went up against Hillary Clinton for the bid for the Democracy nominee. Hillary Clinton came to race as the front runner in the polls, but at the end of the day, Barack Obama came out with the 55% popular vote. After being elected, Barack Obama came up with Obamacare. This helps so many people so that they can have access to health care no matter their status.
It doesn't fit, you must have quit.
Found not guilty!
The O.J. Simpson trial, often called the trial of the century, was one of the most dramatic and controversial cases in American history. In 1994, Simpson, a famous former football player and actor, was accused of brutally murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend John Goldman. Prosecutors argued that Simpson was jealous and angry about Nicole ending their relationship. They claimed that he drove to her house wearing gloves and dark clothes and stabbed both victims to death in a fit of rage. Nicole was nearly decapitated, and Ron was killed trying to defend her. Just days after the murders, instead of turning himself in, O.J. led police on a now infamous low-speed chase in a white Ford Bronco, which was broadcasted live across the nation and watched by millions. This case cut out the NBA Finals, which is why it was watched by so many. Key evidence included a bloody glove found at his home, shoe prints matching a rare pair of Bruno Magli shoes, and DNA evidence linking Simpson to the crime scene. But when he tried the glove on in court, it appeared not to fit due to the dry blood shrinking it and the latex glove he was wearing under it, making it hard for the real glove to put over. His lawyer, Johnny Cochran, famously told the jury, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." O.J.'s defense team, known as the Dream Team, included Robert Kardashian, the father of Kim Kardashian, who became widely recognized after the trial and later rose to fame through reality TV. The defense argued that the LAPD, especially Detective Mark Furman, was racist and corrupt and may have planted evidence. This argument struck a chord with many, especially in the wake of 1992 Los Angeles riots, which had erupted after the police beating of Rodney King. Many Black Americans saw O.J.'s acquittal as a rare win against a racist justice system, while many white Americans saw it as a failure of justice. Despite overwhelming evidence, Simpson was found not guilty in 1995, a verdict that exposed deep racial divides in the U.S. and changed the way media, celebrity, and criminal trials were viewed forever. He had to pay a lot of money, but he didn't have to go to jail because he won the civil lawsuit.
Get out of the car. No. You will.
In 1992, Rodney King, an African-American man, was caught speeding, which then led to a high-speed car chase because he refused to pull over. Eventually, Rodney was pulled over by 4 cops from LAPD: Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wynn, Ted Brizano, and Rolando Solano. There were 2 other passengers in the car along with King, but Rodney was pulled out of his car, and all 4 cops, who were all white, began to beat him for no apparent reason other than the fact that they could. They kicked him and stomped on him. Rodney was hit with their batons over 57 times. King suffered serious physical injuries, including skull fractures, broken bones and teeth, and permanent brain damage. The whole entire event was recorded by witness George Holliday. The 4 cops went to court and were all acquitted and let free, even though there was clear video evidence of them committing the crime. But because they were not only cops but also all white and Rodney was a black man, they were not punished for their crime. Because of this, people began to riot. The riots took place in Los Angeles and started in April and ended around May of 1992. The riots consisted of shootings, looting, and arson, and more than 67 people were killed in the process. 23,000 were injured, along with thousands of arrests. 1,100 buildings were damaged. Property damage was about $1 billion. It wasn't just the black community who rioted, it was many different diverse groups who rioted. The riots highlighted the issues with the LAPD and how unfair the trial was because Rodney King was a black man and it was 4 white cops. They held power and were able to get away with what they did. Overall, the riots showed the deep-seated racial issues throughout the country. Later after the riots, the case went to federal trial, and 2 of the cops were found guilty, while the other 2 were acquitted again.
I'm supporting Trump. I think he brings a fresh perspective, and a lot of people are frustrated with the way things have been.
I understand that, but I'm voting for Hillary. I believe her experience in government makes her more prepared to lead.
A lot of people feel like politicians haven't listened for months. That's why Trump appeals them. Oh, get him! Get him! Oh!
In 2016, something happened that changed American politics in a big way. Donald Trump was elected president. He ran against Hillary Clinton, who had years of political experience and was the first woman to ever be nominated by a major party. A lot of people expected Hillary to win, so when Trump came out on top, it surprised the country and the world. Trump had never held any political office before. He was known as a businessman and a TV personality, not a politician. Some voters liked that. They saw him as an outsider who would shake things up and speak directly to the people. Others were concerned about his lack of experience and the way he talked about certain groups and issues. Hillary Clinton's loss was also a major moment in history. If she had won, she would have broken a huge barrier by becoming the first female president. For many people, her defeat felt like a step backward, but it also encouraged more women to speak up and get involved in politics and even run for office in the years that followed. After Trump took office, the country became even more divided. People had strong opinions. Some believed that he was finally putting Americans first, while others felt like his leadership style created conflict and tension. Topics like immigration, healthcare, climate change, and race became even more divided, and people were more vocal than ever about where they stood. Another big change was how Trump communicated. He used social media, especially Twitter, to talk directly to the public. This was very different from past presidents. It allowed him to speak freely, but it also caused a lot of controversy. Some tweets got a lot of attention, and not always for the right reasons. The way people viewed the media also changed. Trump often called news stories he didn't like fake news, which made it harder for people to agree on what was true or not. That had a big impact on trust in journalism and increased the divide between different political groups. Overall, Trump's election changed how Americans saw politics and each other. It made more people pay attention, speak out, and get involved. But it also brought more division, stronger emotions, and new challenges to how the country works. Even though the election happened years ago, the effects are still being felt today, and how people vote, how leaders communicate, and how divided the country can sometimes feel. No matter where you stand politically, there's no denying that 2016 was a turning point in American history.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again. Boo!
George W. Bush's presidency had a lot of controversy and major events that shaped his time in office. His presidency started off by being weighed down by the 2000 election dispute, which was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court after a vote count in Florida. Despite Bush losing the popular vote, his leadership was defined by the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 attacks, which led to the War on Terror, including the invasion of Afghanistan. However, Bush's decision to invade Iraq in 2003, based on claims that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, remained one of the most controversial aspects of his presidency, especially when no weapons were found and the conflict destabilized the area for years. A positive thing he did during the Iraq War was kill Saddam Hussein. His presidency also saw significant tax cuts which benefited only the wealthy and escalated criticism over the economic issues. Bush faced a lot of criticism over his handling of the 2008 financial crisis, which resulted in huge bailouts for financial institutions under the Troubled Asset Relief Program. The crisis led to widespread economic complications, and Bush's response was meant to be aimed at stabilizing the economy and was criticized for its focus on corporate bailouts. His response to Hurricane Katrina in 2005, particularly the slow federal aid to New Orleans, ruined his image, drawing harsh criticism for the apparent failure of the government involving during the disaster. By the end of his presidency in 2009, Bush left office with low approval ratings because of all of this.
Are you gay? No.
You cannot ask that.
Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a U.S. military policy introduced in 1993 under Bill Clinton. It allowed gay, lesbian, and bisexual people to, but only if they kept their sexual orientation hidden. Under this rule, military personnel were not supposed to ask service members about their sexuality, and in return, LGBTQ+ individuals were not expected to disclose it. If someone was openly gay or came out while serving, they could be discharged. This policy was meant to be a compromise at the time, but in reality, it forced LGBTQ service members to live in secrecy and fear. Over 13,000 people were discharged from the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, not because of their poor performance, but simply because who they were. It created a climate of silence and discrimination, where people had to choose between serving their country and living honestly. Veterans and even some military leaders who believed it weakened trust and morals in the ranks. In 2010, Congress voted to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the change officially took effect in 2011. The repeal allowed LGBTQ+ individuals to serve openly in the military without fear of being discharged for their identity. It was a major milestone in the fights for equal rights and marked progress towards inclusion and acceptance in the armed forces. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a U.S. military policy introduced in 1993 under Bill Clinton. It allowed gay, lesbian, and bisexual people to, but only if they kept their sexual orientation hidden. Under this rule, military personnel were not supposed to ask service members about their sexuality, and in return, LGBTQ+ individuals were not expected to disclose it. If someone was openly gay or came out while serving, they could be discharged. This policy was meant to be a compromise at the time, but in reality, it forced LGBTQ service members to live in secrecy and fear. Over 13,000 people were discharged from the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, not because of their poor performance, but simply because who they were. It created a climate of silence and discrimination, where people had to choose between serving their country and living honestly. Veterans and even some military leaders who believed it weakened trust and morals in the ranks. In 2010, Congress voted to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the change officially took effect in 2011. The repeal allowed LGBTQ+ individuals to serve openly in the military without fear of being discharged for their identity. It was a major milestone in the fights for equal rights and marked progress towards inclusion and acceptance in the armed forces.
Hey. Are you new here?
Yeah.
Want to come to my place?
I guess so.
Let's take some pictures. Jeffrey Dahmer was a young American serial killer who murdered 17 young men and boys between 1978 and 1991. He became infamous for his alarming crimes, which included rape, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism. He was arrested in 1991 after one of his victims escaped and led police to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment, where they found human remains. He was sentenced to life in prison, but was killed by another inmate in 1994. Dahmer is often studied as one of the most disturbing and notorious serial killers in history. The gross and detailed nature of his crimes continued to fascinate and horrify the public. He showed signs of deep psychological issues, including sexual deviance, antisocial behavior, topics that TV shows and documentaries like True Crime have kept his story in the public eye. His case is often cited to show how law enforcement ignored victims because they were mostly gay men of color, leading to important discussions about racism, homophobia, and police bias. His crimes created fear within the LGBTQ+ community, especially among gay men of color. Some feared being targeted or misunderstood simply for their identity. Jeffrey Dahmer killed all those men because of deep, disturbed need for control, sexual obsession, and fear of abandonment. In the early 90s, when being gay was still heavily stigmatized, sentiment in even some circles, even though his actions had nothing to do with the typical LGBTQ+ behavior. This case highlighted how police neglect reports from gay men and people of color. For example, officers ignored witnesses who tried to report suspicious behavior, allowing Dahmer to continue killing. This case led to more discussion within and outside the gay community about safety, visibility, and the importance of police accountability and social support.
Needs to change. No, bro, I didn't put today. I have to run.
On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. 2 of the planes struck the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. The 3rd plane hit the Pentagon in Virginia. The 4th plane crashed into a field after crew and passengers fight off the terrorist. George W. Bush was in Florida at the time, sharing to a class when he declared the attacks were a war of terror. He also vowed to hunt down those responsible for the attacks. Bush addressed the nation, promising a strong and enduring response to the attacks. He worked to build an international coalition to support military action in Afghanistan. He also created the Department of Homeland Security to strengthen domestic security. Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City at the time, played a key role in immediate aftermath of the attacks. He provides leadership and reassurance to the city's residents, coordinating the emergency response after recovery efforts. He also visited the disaster site quite frequently, comforting families and first responders. His leadership throughout the crisis got him a great deal of recognition and praise. The immediate impact includes nearly 30,000 people who died, 343 firefighters, 60 police officers, and 8 EMTs. The rest of the people were in New York City, in the towers or in the planes. The Twin Towers were completely destroyed, and several buildings around the Pentagon collapsed.